Hi guys, this is Nadia Hilker. I'm playing Magna on The Walking Dead, and you guys are listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast, and I'm sending all my love. Bye!
Hello, my name is Cassie McClincy. I play Lydia on The Walking Dead, and you're listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through. Yeah!
Hey there, guys. I'm Callan McAuliffe, and you're listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through on Talk Through Media.
Hey, I'm Lindsley Register, and I play Lara on The Walking Dead. You're listening to The Walking Dead Talk Through on Talk Through Media.
Hey survivors, welcome to episode 122 of The Walking Dead Talk Through. I'm Kyle.
I am unfortunately Brian.
And I'm LT.
We are here to cover The Walking Dead Season 10, Episode 21, titled Diverged. We didn't have any feedback for last episode, so we will just move right into this week. Season 10, Episode 21 was titled Diverge. It was written by Heather Belson, who is a former producer on The Walking Dead. And it was directed by David Boyd.
Wait. Let's not go through that too fast, because I have some things to say about this woman. So Heather Belson used to be a producer on season 5 and 6 of The Walking Dead, and she is behind the ones that I remember specifically that she wrote were season 5, episode 5, which was the one where Eugene flipped over a bus.
Yeah.
So what the heck episode was that? Self-help. That's when Eugene was looking at Rosita and Abraham having sex in the self-help section. Season 5, episode 10, Them, which actually of the ones that she wrote wasn't a bad episode. That's the one where they ate dog. And season 6, episode 6, Always Accountable, which was the first episode that we saw Dwight and Sherry, also known as one of my least favorite episodes in the series. That is until this episode. But anyway.
And let's be clear, Brian, they ate a dog.
Yes, they ate. Was it a dog or was it multiple dogs? Because they did have multiple dogs.
Yes, but they didn't eat dog.
No, yes.
Yeah,
not
dog.
Yes. Not dog as in the dog that is called dog. Yes. But I think they were Dobermans or something like that. But anyway.
Yes, they were Dobermans, I believe.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway. So that episode that she wrote was good. The rest, crap. And so it's 3 out of 4 crap. Gee, Brian, what did you think of this episode?
Yeah. Everybody, that should give you an idea.
Well, you will notice that we have the explicit tag on this episode. So that's because I said, I want to fucking swear in this episode.
There may be swear words, ladies and gentlemen.
We'll make this episode more bearable.
Viewer discretion is advised.
And not just because of the episode. All right, well, let's move on. It's directed by David Boyd, and he has directed 13 episodes of The Walking Dead. He's also directed Season 10, Episode 17, Home Sweet Home, and Season 10, Episode 18, Find Me. Former director of photography on The Walking Dead Seasons 1 and 2. First credit for director of photography was in 1990's The Laughing Dead, Firefly, Deadwood, New York PD Blue, and director's credit include Bionic Woman remake, Friday Night Lights, Men of a Certain Age, which was Scott Bakula and LT. Longmire, the Mist, Queen of the South, Away, among many others. The description of this episode was at the lowest point in their friendship, Daryl and Carol come to a fork in the road and head their separate ways. Carol returns to Alexandria while Daryl stays on the road, each going into their own type of survival mode. That description sounds more exciting than this episode.
Yet very fitting because it's also the lowest point of the show. In more ways than one. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to go all Robert Frost and say, a path diverged in a lonely wood.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then let's get into our ratings. LT, what did you give this episode? Diverged.
Well, I was a little generous. I gave it 6.5 out of 10. Filler. It's not just for soup anymore.
That's better than mine. I gave it a sick dog, Daryl and Carol and rats. Oh my, out of 10.
And I am going to give it an all-time low of 5 stone soup indeed, because it tastes like fucking stones to me. Out of 10.
More fitting than anything.
I've had a really rough week, so I'm gonna have fun with this episode and just shit all over it.
I know that's what's so hard about this too. Is like having what you just said. It's like, oh, I had a really tough week. Blah blah. It's like, yes, and this show was supposed to be like something to look forward to be like, hey, cool, it's Sunday, let's go. And it was like, huh.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give the show a little bit of credit. I do have a feeling that if I watched it one or maybe 2 more times, I might be able to raise my rating of it because I might appreciate the character moments a little bit more. But I only, in my just a very busy week, I've only had a chance to watch it once, and as such, it's going to get a I've only watched it once, and this is a piece of shit rating. So,
well, if it makes you feel any better, Brian, I watched it 3 times, and
it never got any better.
Never got any better.
I watched it. Actually, I did watch it 3 times, but the second time was kind of a little bit more like I kind of skipped ahead to today. Was just like, oh, I'm just going to certain scenes just because I wanted to, like, hey, what did she say in this one, or like whatever. I was just like, I don't care about half of this anymore. So.
I think I got all I needed the first.
It just felt like a damn webisode, like it was, or a deleted scene. It was like a 42-minute deleted scene, and not anything we needed to see. Like, and you compare that to even the first episode, the Maggie episode, I thought was quite a bit better than this, and certainly the one with Gabriel and Aaron was, I thought, a fantastic episode. This one, just, I mean, I appreciated that, we got a little more of Carol, but it's just not something I needed to see.
Yeah.
Well, and we've said this on a couple of other ones. If they could have, this would have done for a half-hour episode.
Or shorter.
Yeah. It's like it was long in places it didn't need to be.
Yeah, this probably would have been a good thing to maybe put on AMC Plus as, additional behind the scenes stuff or something like that.
Or just like here is the extra episode for more on Daryl and Carol's friendship. Just like totally not on, like just an add-on.
Or here's the new sitcom of Daryl and Carol.
Well, I mean, if this is what the spinoff's going to be like, well, then count me out.
Modern Walker Family, or something.
It was just the whole emo with none of the laugh track.
Yeah, and if it seems like we're filling, we are, because we really got very little feedback on this episode. In fact, one of the pieces that we got, and we delayed our recording of this a day, and we just got it just before we started recording. So, it just shows that we really didn't get much feedback on it at all. And to me, that tells you all you need to know. It just, I don't know. I'll get to it when we start talking about ratings on this episode, because I shared it in the Facebook group about what I think, but yeah. So I didn't like it.
Well,
gee, Brian, what are you serious? I never would have understood that from what you said.
Well, I'm totally taken aback, Brian. I couldn't tell anything by your intro that you were so nonplussed by this episode.
It reminds me. It's like I'm playing the role of Ruthie in season 7 right now. Because listeners, if you didn't listen to us back then, she hated season 7 with a passion. She hated the whole, Savior's War, and it's just anyway. So,
all right. Well,
anyway,
let's continue.
That's it.
Let's continue and we'll get to the dishing section in a minute.
Yeah.
Let's get through what happy patter we have to offer.
Well, we did get one listener's rating, and it comes from Glenn from Toronto, and she gave it a 7 out of 10. Nice. Just clean, simple, sweet.
I was going to say,
nice.
she did not give it a 10 out of 10.
No, she's just a nice. All right, well, that leads us into our awesome sauce. All right, well, Glenn is from Toronto. She gives her awesome sauce as Dog deciding on choosing and following Carol instead of Daryl. Maybe sensing that Carol needed him more with Carol's current mental state than Daryl did? Carol needed just a sidekick for her scenes.
Yeah.
More.
I liked the extra dog scenes. No problem with that. I'm just going to throw this is kind of a non sequitur, but LT, when she called it nice, does it remind you of MRE Steve?
Let's get this on a plate.
Nice. Yeah. Was it Steve 1989? I think is on YouTube. Yeah. This guy gets so geeked about having MREs. It's so funny. Anyway,
I told you the absolute best was the 1918 emergency ration, and he's going, "This is over 100 years old." Nice. And he actually ate part of it.
Yep.
And then that's the best part, because you'll see his hand come out. He'll grab a piece and it'll disappear, and he'll go,
Yep. Or he'll say, like, "Oh, this is terrible," and then he'll take another bite.
We'll take another bite to make sure.
Nice.
This tastes like sawdust. Oh, gotta have another. Oh, it's terrible. Anyway,
that's
probably worth a blade.
Well, then that leads us into our awesome sauce. So why don't you take it, Brian?
It's pretty bad when the first thing I have to say about a show has nothing to do with the show itself. So I mentioned last week that my AMC premiere was coming up for renewal, and I was going to cancel it and instead have AMC Plus. Well, it was time for it to come in, and for some reason, my AMC premiere, despite being canceled, still worked. And I don't understand why it's still working. It shouldn't work. It says it's no longer no longer active, but it says it expired, but then when you look at the status of it, it says active. So it's like, I don't understand why it's still working, but thank you. So until it stops working, I will, I guess I'll stick with it, but
Yeah, might as well.
so yeah, their loss is my gain.
Yay.
Well, I guess I really tried hard to find something awesome because it just really wasn't. So really seeing the Fear trailers was about the only thing that really was exciting about rewatching this episode over again. Cause it's just like, I'm excited for the back half and hopefully it's good. You know, it just seems like a lot's going on and they can do more and have more people on the screen than what we've gotten in this, you know, little 10.3.
And we got to see it, and there was the teasing John Dory back in action.
Yep. Yeah, I've been watching a lot of X-Files lately, and it's so funny how seeing, like, you see like a character like Delon, and it's like, you're like, oh my gosh, he's in Fear. Oh, he's in Law and Order. It's like all, like, I feel like a lot of like some of our favorite like characters from our, you know, from different like shows for sci-fi or like this, you know, this kind of show.
He was a Terminator in the Sarah Connor.
Yes,
Chronicles.
which I loved that. I just wish it was, you know, it continued, but they cut it off. But it's just so funny to see them like starting like their careers back in like all these old sci-fi X-Files and all this other stuff.
Yep.
And now they're like these huge characters and like, you know, fan favorites and all this stuff. And I don't know, it's fun to see that. Everybody gets their start somewhere. If it's Law and Order, it might be X-Files, it might be Star Trek.
Everybody's in Law and Order.
I know. I mean, my husband's always just like, oh, that's so-and-so. And like, they're from Law and Order season 2, episode whatever. Like, he actually knows this stuff. The only other thing I could really just try to give it an awesome sauce. I mean, it was funny to kind of just see like Carol, like she goes off. I think it was like a dog or some like knocked over her crock pot. And so she kind of lost her stew. And so she leaves to go find more herbs or whatever, but she's like out in the field or whatever. And then all these walkers start coming up and she's just all like, she's like, what? You think I can't take care of myself? And then she was just like, first you. And like, she just clears them all out or whatever. And then she comes back and she's all covered in blood. And Jerry's all like, you okay? She's like, yes, I'm fine.
Yes, it's a fact. She's coming back covered in blood, carrying her little bucket.
Yeah.
and I'm going to talk about part of that look a little bit later.
Okay.
But yeah, it's the Jerry's going, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah. It was just fun to see just her, I don't know. She's such a great actress and I love her character, always have. And, you know, it's like, just, I don't know. It was something, at least in the episode, that was kind of like, oh, that's cute, you know. Yep. Let's move on. All right. Well, that's all I had. What'd you have, LT?
Well, I think my most awesome sauce was the fact it was Jerry. I just love his character. It was good to see him again, even though really he was just, for the most part, he was just being Carol's straight man.
Yeah.
You know, for all the stuff that she was doing, he was like, you know, oh, hi, Carol. Oh, hi, Carol. You okay? You know, there's like the nervous eye darts.
Yeah. Even though he was the only one in the episode.
Well, there was, you know, guy with a hoe in the background.
Oh yeah.
Guy with a rake at the wall. Guy carrying 2x4 in the distance.
Yeah. I made an observation about that and I'll leave that at the end, but it was,
well, I mean, come on. It's the one chance that the guys in the grip department
I know get to be on the show. That's why I was like, the dude that opened up the gate and let her in was probably like just a PA. Like, hey, you want to just do this?
He's the intern. It's like, here, put on this dirty jacket.
Yep.
Open the gate and nod at her.
Yep. And he had no speaking rule, so no SAG card. Didn't have to pay him.
You go, look, Mom, look, I'm in the episode.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, let's just go on to our weak sauce.
You're worthless and weak.
All right. We didn't have any listeners week sauce, but we had our own. What did you have, LT?
Well, my week sauce is in two parts. The first is, do I really want Walking Dead content this bad? I mean, it's great that we're getting shows, but it's like, this is just not, it's not compelling television. I mean, it's great that we're having episodes, but I'm just not digging it that much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the second part was, is the getting stronger than the wanting?
Yeah.
Because we want season 11 in a way. We want to get back and find out what happens with Negan and Maggie. We want to find out, what happens in Alexandria. We want to find out what happened to Eugene. But what we got was just, it's character pastiches. It's webisode content. It's 45 minutes of show that they could have probably done in 20 without the long cuts and the
music
pauses and yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely feeling like, it's like, it's great that like, ooh, we're having Walking Dead on, but then it's also kind of like, is any of this even going to matter? It's like, I mean, I think the Negan episode obviously is going to that's probably what they wanted to do all along. But, I mean, I just kind of was going into where the fact that I was like, it's like, we already got a Daryl and Carol episode. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
wasn't there somebody else that we could have had some information or, whatever? It was just kind of like, we kind of already had this. And now it's like here it is again, but it's just like this long drawn out, like we know that they have relationship issues. We saw that already like 2 episodes ago. And, it's kind of like, I don't know if this was just, they set on being like, we want to do 6 episodes or whatever, with the Negan one being obviously the last one. And it was this is all they could get to do the shoot. And so they were just like, okay, well, let's scramble. Let's do something. And they are doing a spinoff and like whatever with Daryl and Carol. But it was just like, this episode didn't even need to be done.
Yeah.
Like we already knew all this. It was just more of stuff.
It reminds me of Sukal on Star Trek Discovery this season, because he had a great quote. Wanting is not the same as doing. And this reminds me of this 10C of The Walking Dead, especially this episode of, it's basically not, we wanted Walking Dead, and, up until this point, and I'm thinking of you, Renee, you're probably listening to us saying, finally, because we have been saying that, we've been giving it the benefit of the doubt, but this one crossed all sorts of lines for me. It was a waste of time.
Yes.
For me. It was 42 minutes that I couldn't get back. And I fell asleep twice during the episode, and I had to go back and watch it again. So that doesn't normally happen. But
yeah,
an episode of this putting me to sleep is not a good sign. So it just was boring.
Yes.
And that's basically my entire thing for Weak Sauce is the entire episode. So waste of time.
Yep. I can completely agree 100%. We could have done without it. There's no need for it. They could have just done 5. Why'd they have to do 6?
It had some interesting parts to it. Like I liked, I like Carol's like struggle trying to get the rat and her kind of destroying the house in the process. Mm-hmm. I like Daryl almost getting trapped under the car and, getting the, looting the soldier, I like that versus what Maggie did a few weeks back. But, those were not enough to save this episode in any way. It just was a waste of time. Waste of time.
And I can't argue.
All right. Well, then why don't we just lead into our what size? Because I know we have some of that.
What?
No listeners what sauce this week, but we do have our own. So go ahead, LT, take it away.
Well, the first thing I was going to bring up was Carol bringing back her facial expressions from the porch dick era in Alexandria. I mean, no, she didn't offer to make Jerry cookies, but it was very reminiscent to me of those scenes where she was being all happy homemaker one minute, and then she was being, I'll get you and your little dog too. But it just seemed almost a little schizophrenic that, yes, I can tell that she's going through some things. We know that she's had some issues back from when she was taking the pills and, the book cover with all the kids on it. But she was very, like I said, it just reminded me of that run there with the cookies and, I can't remember his name, just Mr. Porch Dick.
Yeah.
But the fact that she was so happy one minute and then she'd walk off and be like, but she was so over the top happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's sort of what was throwing Jerry, because I'd say it was kind of, it was easy for me to pick up on that she was being extra happy. But yeah, it was just very jarring. So, I mean, the next part was Daryl walking like he had sand in his britches. He seemed to be walking fine at the first of the episode. He seemed to be walking fine, midway when he was first started pushing the motorcycle. But then all of a sudden he's doing the Festus walk when he was going down the train tracks. And I'm like, did he get hurt? I mean, we know he got stabbed in the leg back when he was fighting Beta, maybe. But I'm kind of going, if you're going to be limping, you need to sell it earlier than that. It just seemed like it was very pronounced. And I was kind of wondering why. So right after that is when he gets in his little scuffle with the soldier walker. And the comment my wife made was that walker was suddenly very spry. Because if you noticed when he stumbled off into the ditch and got hung on the tree, as soon as Daryl came down the bank, that walker seemed to suddenly go, hoo-ha, and seemed to be moving pretty fast when he jumped on top of him. And about the two bodies that he took the stuff. Yes, I'm glad he took the stuff. But the comment that I made, it reminded me of, why when I play Fallout, my inventory is always maxed. Loot the body, take all the stuff, and sort it out later. I mean, he's been carrying this mostly empty floppy backpack around with him all this time. So take all the stuff, check their pockets. Yes, he got his multi-tool and some magazines and a couple of MREs, but just from personal experience, there's stuff that I'd carry in my pockets instead of carrying it on my web gear in case I had to take my web gear off. So, like I said, loot the body, take the stuff, sort it out later. Wait till you're safe. Just put all that stuff in your backpack and then check it out later. And we had like the mini phases of Carol where we had Carol, the home improvement edition. She's like, well, I need power. So she suddenly fixes the solar panels and she's, doing all this stuff and scurrying around because Jerry didn't say, hey, go help X. So she just sort of starts doing stuff. And then, of course, that segues into Carol. I hate drywall edition. Just, when she's trying to chase the rat and she just ends up, trashing that wall, trying to find the rat. I was like, are we snapping that hard that we just have to go after the wall? And of course, then again, from a set dressing standpoint, I guess busting up drywall is the easiest, cheapest practical effect they could have. And my last what sauce is I've got to say, dog. Dog. You need to get in touch with your inner terrier, boy. Go after the rat. I mean, he's eating the furniture. He's, eating the blanket. But then when the rat's there, he's just sitting there going, hi, Carol.
Yeah.
It's good to see you. And I'm thinking, and granted, I don't know. Yeah, I guess they couldn't have the stunt rat getting eaten, but just most of the dogs like that I know they'd have been diving under the counters and chasing around the corners instead of Carol. It would have been the dog going after it. I just was like, there's a rat in the room and the dog's just sitting there going, hi, Mom, got a treat?
Yeah, I was taking the dogs kind of being all rambunctious and stuff like that because it's like he's not Carol's dog. Like he's like Daryl's. And so I felt like that dog was just acting out and like not listening to her or doing anything because, she's not Daryl. And I don't know, at least that's how I took it. It was just like, oh yeah, he's like, this is not my master. So I have like a free day to run around and do whatever I want. And bite, tear up the house and knock stuff over and not pay, not listen to her commands. But I agree with you. It's like, what dog is not, my dog will freaking go through a fence to get a squirrel, like a rat. It's like, dog, I'm pretty sure that you're hungry just as much as everybody else. And you know how to, go chase something.
And that's my point.
Yeah. It just did. That was for, it was Carol's scene. So they couldn't let dog, upstage her.
My cat would have done a better job going after the rat.
Would have caught it and ate it right there in front of you.
But for that matter, he does a better job at tearing up furniture, which is not a positive thing.
Yeah, I guess maybe Daryl didn't have furniture for dog to tear up, so he was like, "Whoa, what's this?"
Yeah.
The drywall thing, which I think is kind of what goes into my what sauce. Like, I did feel some parts of this episode were just kind of like, oh, we just need something to happen and do. And so, let's make her tear down drywall and break through, because that's like all the action that we're going to get out of this episode. Because we can't, they can't, put her up against, another other human being, because I'm sure.
But they did kill walkers this episode.
Though they did. So we got that from not last week. Well, I mean, that's kind of like what I thought with like the Daryl and the whole, like, it was kind of like, okay, Carol's got her mission, her quest, which was like, I've got to make myself useful or something. And so I'm going to make stone soup. And then Daryl's like, oh, his mission's got to be like, oh, the fuel line broke on his motorcycle, so he has to go find a replacement. So, of course, he's off into the woods and, comes up, like, starts searching all those cars. And then it was just like, okay, the car that is going to give us our action sequence is like the walker's inside. He opens up the hood, sees like, oh, this looks like I've got my fuel line. But it's like, did he not see it was hanging? Like the car wasn't on level ground when he went under it. And it was, I don't know. It's like, couldn't you have just killed the walker? Because don't you just do that? Isn't that what you're only thing? It's like, oh, here's a walker. I'll just like, easy to kill. It's like it's inside the car. You open the door and just stab it. But it was just like, oh no, I'm going to crawl under this car. Oh, look, one of its wheels actually kind of off the ground and it's not on level ground. And this walker's going to move around and he's, it was just this whole like, here's the whole, suspense, sequence of like really nothing happening.
Let's do something that's different than what we normally do. Put ourselves in some sort of contrived risk, knowing that nothing's going to happen to him because plot armor, but to create some tension for the scene because we've got to fill 5 more minutes of screen time.
Right. Exactly. It's just, like Carol, her scene was get to destroy drywall, and Daryl was like, oh yeah, and everything that you seem to be very, very like smart and resourceful and like, you problem solve and this and that. And then you're just doing this. And then it was just like, here's our suspense moment. Like even the music was kind of like, and it's like, okay, whatever. Of course he gets out and goes,
and you've been doing this for a very long time. Yep. That seems to be like one of those rookie mistakes that we'd expect to see in World Beyond, perhaps.
Yes. True. Yeah. And also
not Daryl.
Right. Well, that's the other thing too. I was like, I thought like, and I don't know if I didn't really notice if like he was kind of like walking weird before he fell into the pit with the first walker with loot. But I thought even him falling into the pit and like tripping and like, really? Like everybody, it always seems like, here, I've got to go kill a walker, but I'm going to trip. And then somehow the walker breaks the branch that's holding it. Oh, now it's like on top of him, blah, blah, blah. And then he's like, there's your like, he almost died. Whatever.
And when he got out of the ditch, the walkers that fell into the ditch more gracefully than Daryl did.
Yeah, they pretty much were consistent. I don't know. I kind of made a comment. It was like even the walkers looked like they were socially distanced. They were coming in one at a time off screen. So I'm sure that person could get out of the way. The next one fell in. It's like, okay, cool. You get out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyways, that was all I had for my what sauce. Do you have anything, Brian?
Not really. Just, I mean, I think you guys pretty much said everything that is worth saying.
Yeah. Well, let's. But
well, I did have similar thoughts about like the car and so yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep moving then. Let's go into our sad and aw sauce. Aww. And actually, we don't have anything for this. So,
well, if we have to, my sad sauce is me. I was sad
because you had to watch the episode.
Because I watched it again.
Then I'll give you an aw because it made you sad. Oh, that's true. That's all of us. All right. Well, let's just continue on and go into our feedback.
We can talk about it. Done talking. Time to listen.
All right, we did get some feedback in voicemail actually from Megan Lehman from Williamsburg, PA. So let's listen to what Megan had to say.
Hi guys, it's Megan in Pennsylvania with feedback on Diverged, the 5th of 6 Walking Dead intermezzo episodes this season. And I just want to say I really liked it. I have a feeling most people may not like it so much, and I do understand that. But this was kind of a subtle episode, but I think I'm going to watch it again and try to pick up some more on the themes that I noticed. But the title being Diverged, that immediately made me think of the Robert Frost poem, And Daryl and Carol literally diverged in a wood. So, I mean, they kind of hit you over the head with that one if you know the poem. So the episode was one of those, slice of life, day in the life kind of stories. But I think it was also about how Daryl and Carol would be better off working together than apart. For example, when Daryl needed the knife that he had given Carol, or maybe he could have used some help getting, that part from the car without the car almost falling on him. He survived fine, but it would have been much easier to get by with a trusted friend. Same with Carol. Yeah, she was fine, but she had a really frustrating day. She didn't get to make her soup. The rat and the dog situation drove her crazy. I think that the way the whole episode just felt like something was off, everything was frustrating to both of them. They just had a bad day. I think the message we're supposed to get there is they work better as a team. They're better as a duo. So hopefully, as a few people said, wow, I hope the Daryl and Carol spinoff isn't like this all the time. Well, they're not together. So yeah, it's not going to be like that when they're actually hopefully working together and putting on a united front to accomplish their goals. Now, one thing I did notice, there were some similar beats, and unfortunately I didn't write them all down to their stories, but one of them was, I think both of them said the line, "See you later, asshole." It was Carol to the rat and Daryl to the zombie in the car whose weight had shifted and almost got him killed. Now, I will say, I think there was some real sloppiness in this episode that bothered me, mostly with Carol's story. There were some just totally unrealistic details with, the rat situation. First, if you have one rat that size in your house, you have a lot of rats of various sizes in the house. They said Alexandria had been, infested with rats. So it's not like Carol's house just had one and done. That was kind of silly that she was chasing this one rat, trying to pick it up with her bare hands. I don't know. The cardboard trap thing, the rat would have just chewed through the cardboard if she hadn't gotten there immediately. That was kind of silly. I thought they could have just done a better job in, filming that rat chase. But I did like the dog acting. I think because they have so few actors to pay on these episodes, they could put all their budget into Dog, which was wonderful. Possibly Dog was the best actor of the show. And a final thing I have to mention that drove me nuts, I think we need to send Carol back for some food safety training, because she walked into Alexandria after however long on the road, absolutely filthy, and then she's wearing those same fingerless gloves and starts picking up food and chopping it wearing these filthy gloves, never washed anything, never took her gloves off, and then she's out killing zombies and picking up the bucket, with the food that she had with her bloody hands, and then she's chasing rats, tearing through walls. All of this doesn't seem to bother her from a food safety perspective, but when Dog knocks the bucket over and the food falls on the floor, she couldn't just pick it up and wash it off. The floor was much cleaner than she was. That drove me nuts. There was some OCD thing going on there that I could not get over with Carol. She should know better, since she plays Susie Homemaker. But other than that, I really actually enjoyed it, and I hope you guys will have some positive things to say. Thanks a lot. Talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you, Megan. You made some good points, but I just kind of had a hard time with just the pacing of this episode, so that's probably what ruined it for me. But I think actually it was funny when she was talking about the Carol. I didn't really necessarily catch that. It was just oh yeah, she was filthy. She's preparing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing that popped, you can still eat rats, can't you? I know I've seen Survivor,
yes.
And they,
they're tasty.
It's I wasn't sure. I obviously didn't get to watch it, a whole bunch of times, but
unless they're carrying typhus or something like that.
Yeah.
I think of that old Little House on the Prairie episode.
No, and I was thinking about the whole food safety and this and that, and then for some reason Bob popped in my head. It's tainted meat.
Yep.
But they weren't zombified rats. They were just rats.
Zombified rats.
Well, and and if I can, you get your one tasty historical fact that back in the days of sailing ships, especially in the British Navy, they would send the midshipmen, if they were boys, down into the hold to chase rats that were in the stores. because it was fresh meat.
Yeah.
And they called them millers because they looked like somebody working in a grist mill because they'd come out and be all powdered with flour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what'd you guys think of her feedback?
It was good, and I said it earlier. I think I'll probably appreciate this episode more on subsequent watches, and I think that my impression of the show is a little bit tainted. Speaking of tainted meat, because I've had a really busy week, and I really had looked for, something good to come out of this, and I just didn't. It just felt like a waste of time. But it reminds me a little bit, and I mentioned that I think earlier in the season. Here's Not Here. When I first saw Here's Not Here, I hated it because here we are. Glenn has disappeared under a dumpster. Rick is in a motorhome or an RV, and it looks like the walkers are about to get him. And so two of our people are in peril, and they go to this Morgan episode that's a flashback, and I'm like, what the F are we? I don't know why I held back.
Yes, this is explicit for a reason.
I don't know what the hell, why the hell are we seeing this right now? So I didn't like the episode at first. I hated it in some ways. I mean, I appreciated it, but I also was really pissed off that we were getting that episode. And then when I went back later in the season and rewatched, I loved it. So perhaps on subsequent watchings, I'll go back and I'll have more of a positive opinion of it. Now, you guys have seen it more than I have, and you obviously don't feel much differently about the episode than you did. So maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe we'll love it.
Yeah, I think one of my problems though was the fact that it was like that. This was a story that I just didn't really want. I wanted somebody else.
Right.
It's like the princess story.
Yeah.
It was like the first time I saw it, I was kind of like, oh, this is kind of like whatever. And then when I watched it and actually, and I watched it a couple of times, I was like, oh, like I'm getting it. I'm like, then I was like, the story started like making sense, and then I was like learning about her more, and it was like that kind of stuff like helped me put interest into her because she's new. I want to know more about her, and I felt like that episode they really did a good job of that. But this was just like I almost actually remembered whenever the previews were coming on from the last episode about this episode, and I kind of was like, I thought that we were getting something else. I don't necessarily look ahead too much, like, of like what's coming down the line. Like the Negan, I knew that was going to happen, but until we started talking about it a couple episodes ago, I was kind of like, oh, that's right. There's a Negan episode. Like, I don't want to like jump too far ahead. I just kind of want to let it just go. But it was like, I saw the previews and I'm like, oh, Carol, Daryl, didn't we just have that episode? I thought we were going to get like something new, or different.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of why I was kind of like, I just didn't want to see more of this.
Again, we talked about this in this season already, or this, cross section of a subsection of a season, but very COVID-y, and this may have been the most COVID-y of the episodes that we've seen so far, because it really felt like we were watching they were it was a lot of Carol just by herself and a lot of Daryl just by himself, and that was it. So I mean, yes, easier to shoot in a COVID time, but it just felt like each of those stories could have been their own webisodes and not an episode of the show. So
Yeah.
And I think maybe in that way, if it had been presented in that way, maybe I would have liked it more. But getting it in that way, and I'll just remember the way that Renee said it last week, super, super, super boring.
Well, yeah, I think, yeah, it just.
And yes, Renee, I did hear you on the Walking Dead cast this week. So, you said something similar on there, but yeah, it's just.
Oh, well,
I already said it enough.
Yeah. And I think the thing too, when you were talking about the COVIDness of it, when Jerry was saying, oh yeah, well, they're working on this and we're working on that and we're working on this. And it just seemed like the only person you saw was, shovel guy in the distance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Rake guy in the distance and Jerry.
Yeah.
It's like, so where are all these hungry Alexandrians?
They are all doing social distancing.
Well,
they're all off screen.
Well, since we're talking about this, I'll just go ahead because this is what I had in my feedback. It was just like, yeah, out of all the episodes, just because I wasn't really like, it wasn't something that I was like looking toward, like for, like I wasn't looking for like, oh, is this the COVID episode? Like, how are they doing? They did this during the pandemic, that's still ongoing. But it's like I felt like I immediately saw that from the start of this episode, and it kept like popping up. I'm like, oh yeah, it's just like Jerry's at a distance, Carol's at a distance. Oh, she walks in, she's by herself. It just became really apparent. And then that just kind of was like, oh, okay, well, I don't know, that got in my head. But then it was like I went back again and rewatched it, and I noticed, I'm like, oh yeah, she walks into Alexandria, and of course we were making fun of it. It's like, oh, and the PA is the one that opens the gate to let her in, because that's like the only crew that's like that can be there. But then you could hear the sound effects, and you hear all this commotion going on, all these hammers and like building and like people talking, but yet you only see her and there's no one around her. But then like later on, yeah, she's talking to Jerry. Then it's like, oh yeah, there's like one person is way in the distance, and like immediately goes off screen. And then later on, there's like a close up of her. And then you see someone walk, like there's the extra that's just walking past her just to make it look like there's like life behind her. But I swear, like there was this episode, and a scene, and I put it in our notes that I was like, there was somebody in the back with like the pickaxe or working, and I swear that person's wearing a mask. Like I watched that so many times, and I'm like, yeah, that's not like, oh, he's got a beard. It's like,
he's wearing a mask.
Yeah, he's wearing a mask. So it was kind of, it's just like whatever. They obviously did their best to try to give some life, depending on what their restrictions were and the safety protocols and stuff like that. But yeah, even the walkers looked like they were socially distanced, like when they were like.
It still ends up feeling like this is Carol's I Am Legend. That she's like by herself.
Yeah. Yeah. It just didn't really have the impact if that's what they were trying to at least try to go with like the whole story, but it just, yeah. I'll leave it at that. All right, Megan, thank you so much for your feedback. We always love the voicemail, so definitely keep that coming. I think next week's going to probably be more exciting and probably more stuff to talk about.
Yep.
All right. Well, our next feedback comes from Glennis from Toronto. And LT, you want to take this?
I will. So Daryl lost both dog and the pocket knife, all originally from Leah. Without the pocket knife, Daryl was forced to improvise and come up with an alternate plan to replace that broken hose on his motorbike. So a comparison that even without the missing one can soldier on and solve problems and get ahead in spite of the missing the items and the loved ones. If he still had the pocket knife, he wouldn't have gotten the 2 replacement knives, the ammo, the machine gun, and the MREs. I wonder if there's more Army stuff out there to be raided. Maybe an Army barracks is close by too.
Yeah, I thought the same thing, because it was like, even though this is just what we've got so far. And there are I guess we did get, when, Maggie, the first episode where there's the rapiers, whatever, it's like, and they're all in military garb. So it's like, we don't know who this group is, or like, maybe it is a military base. But yeah, here's again, we're seeing more military, outfits.
So Daryl's pocket knife helped Carol fix the solar panel's power. So even though Daryl and Carol are going through this tense patch and are physically apart, they are still working together indirectly. And having tiffs in an apocalypse is not the best time to be apart. Together, they would have been that much stronger. She says Daryl pushing the bike through the woods has the same vibe as season 6 episode Always Accountable, with Dwight and Sherry in the end taking his motorbike.
Yeah.
Which
exactly.
is worse than losing dog and a pocket knife.
And who wrote that episode? Ladies and gentlemen, I rest my case.
So Carol went a tad overboard in flushing out the rat. She really wanted to accomplish at least one thing and failed at that dismally. I don't think Carol is used to failure. Reminded me of a rat or mouse movie where the guy goes insane and destroys his house trying to capture the critter. At least Carol only had drywall to replace. So Jerry noticed that with Carol, that she needed the extra support and dearly wanted to feel useful. Yeah, sometimes all you need is a hug. No words needed.
That was actually a positive. Okay, so there's an awesome sauce, or an aw sauce, the hug.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, she goes on and says that stone soup story was quaint and illustrates the workload is always lessened and goals achieved if you share the work out. Trying to do it solo can also result in failure and a flagging spirit. Why didn't Carol just go with the 3-second rule and pick up the soup ingredients that had fallen on the floor? Good question. Just recalled that another Walking Dead episode, season 6, episode 14, Twice as Far, that entailed a series of times Olivia taking stock of the plentiful pantry and then pulling down the garage door to the kitchen. And that episode ended with Carol leaving Alexandria and getting stopped on the road by some of the Savior gang and the unfortunate death of Denise by Dwight that Daryl and Rosita had to witness. That's a good point. So come all the way to this episode, season 10, episode 21, Diverged, and it has the better outcome of both Daryl and Carol staying in Alexandria. Although the two are still apart, there's a chance of reconciling, and of course plot armor with the spinoff approaching too. So Daryl let Carol keep the pocket knife. So maybe symbolic that he may be on the road to coping with the loss of Leah. He has other pocket knives now, until Leah, decides to pop back up into his life and make that situation all the more interesting, with maybe Connie also reappearing at the same time, if Virgil hasn't imprisoned her like he did to Michonne.
Thank you, Glennis.
Thank you, Glennis.
Yeah, you always make some always great feedback and great points.
And she's like me in the fact that she has a photographic memory for scenes and episodes. So
no, and that helps because it's like that. I don't know. It's just, you always add to the discussion. But I mean, yeah, like the whole Jerry and Carol hugging, and it was like, oh yeah. I mean, that was the epitome of the aw sauce for this episode, and I totally didn't even like make it into my notes. Yeah, I actually probably I'd have to agree though, just for another, like, not necessarily maybe all sauce, but just to make a point. But it's like, yes, it was good to see that Daryl and Carol, like, they did come back. So even though they're apart, they're in Alexandria. They're in the same place. It's not Daryl out camping and, Carol's always popping up to come visit here and there. So it's like, we'll see where this leads, to like whatever they do in season 11 and towards obviously the spinoff, because they're going to have that. But I mean, Carol could have, like, I think she even like mentioned it where she was just like talking to a dog. It's like, oh, I'm like, should I just take off? Should I just leave? It's like, Daryl, like, I forgot what it was, like, Daryl, comes back. No, it's like Daryl always comes back. And she's like, I don't, do I? And then I think that's what she was talking about, like leaving or whatever. So, they could have had it where she takes off and that would have been part, like whatever. I'd been like, oh no, she's totally like leaving everybody or leaving the whole thing. And then Daryl coming back. But yeah, they kept them together at least.
Yep. Or she's totally leaving again.
Well, yeah, she does do that a lot. All right. Well, that was the rest of our listeners' feedback. So, I kind of like, Brian, did you have anything else? Because I pretty much was my only other feedback, unless I think of something else, was just the whole COVID-y episode.
I think I've said enough.
Yep.
All right.
I think we beat the wheels off this thing about as much as we can.
We spent enough time, and we're not going to add more to fill to make this a 2-hour podcast. All right. Well, then that leads us into news, ratings, and info.
There's a couple weird stories on the news.
Well, we talked about this a little bit. I said that the episode was a low point in this show, and I said in more ways than one. And unfortunately, one of the ways is in the ratings. For the first time in The Walking Dead history, The Walking Dead did not get in its first watch 2 million viewers in its first airing. It got a 0.55 in the 18 to 49 with 1.938 million viewers. So the ratings between this and Fear are not much different anymore. That is down, only down just a tiny little fraction in the 18 to 49 last week. It got a 0.56, but in the total number of viewers, it got a 2.113 million last week. Talking Dead, though, was also down. It got a 0.13 in the 18 to 49 with 620,000 viewers, down from last week's 0.18 and 808,000 viewers. In the Parrots this week, Parrot Analytics, it still was at a number 7 in overall demand, down from number 6. It was at 43.9 times the average show's demand versus last week's 45.1 times. Number 1 this week was yet again SpongeBob. Good old, always SpongeBob. And there was some speculation that some of that might have to do with the fact that there is a prequel that is airing right now on Paramount Plus. I think it's Camp Coral. And that, yeah, I haven't seen it, but and this information on Talking Dead is absolutely wrong. So, actually, who was on there was Melissa McBride, Cooper Andrews, the director David Boyd, and I don't remember who else was on there.
It was the.
Yeah, I didn't watch it.
It was one of the two twins that does the home flip show on.
That's right. Yes.
HGTV.
One of the Property Brothers. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Who's been on Talking Dead before. And I don't remember who it was either. So
that guy with the beard.
that guy with the beard.
Yep. Okay.
Yes.
That does the house show.
Yep. And as far as news is concerned, I believe there was some news.
All I was going to say was we had another Fear trailer.
Yes.
And we've got one more week of this before Fear comes back.
Yep. Excited for that. Although I think next episode is going to be really good. So if all of this was for naught, then at least I think a backstory of Negan's
I'm really holding out hope for the backstory of Negan.
I am too, especially when we know that it's actually his wife. Like that's in the episode.
There is one story here from Collider saying Jeffrey Dean Morgan was surprised that the show was ending on season 11, and there's some speculation was the show canceled. And I don't know that I think that's more speculation than anything. Mm-hmm. And but maybe it was going to keep going, and that maybe they decided not to have it keep going because the ratings were not up to speed or whatever.
Yeah, that totally could be part, but also I'm curious if it's like the pandemic had anything to do with it, because that threw up the whole timetable, and they had 3 movies that they're saying they're going to make.
Right.
And I think that could be part of it, that maybe they're trying to transition assets and resources away from the show that'll be involved in the movie.
That could be. And I don't know. I think that given the erosion of the ratings from season to season, especially this season, I think that that ending the show, especially considering at least up until 10C, that the show has been, on a high note. I think ending the show now is probably in its best interest, and for them to continue The Walking Dead into like season 15, probably wouldn't be in its best interest,
Well, they had an interview where Robert Kirkman had talked about the end of the comic book.
And that was something else I was going to bring up, is that the comic book ended. So that kind of set a path for the show to end as well. Cause, it's ending roughly about the same spot as the comic book ends, right? We're about to see the Commonwealth, and it's shortly after the Commonwealth comes in that the show ends. So,
yeah, I thought kind of the same. As just, I think there is time. Ratings, I feel like ratings though, and you look at ratings more than I do, but after even just being part of Nielsen before, it's just like so much has changed on how people watch, and then what's the actual measurement that is like how something is popular and what's not. And it just seems like what airs live nowadays doesn't, especially like how you factor in all the people that do pay for AMC Plus or whatever, and then see it the week before, and then they're not even on the live schedule. So it's not to say that it's like, maybe the parrots do kind of make a little bit more sense, but I think there's still a lot of, interest in The Walking Dead, in the Walking Dead universe. But I do agree that, like, with the comic of already ended, everybody that reads the comic already knows that, like, oh, this is how it ends and this is what happened. For the show to be like, okay, well, we could either keep going and just keep telling the rest of, they could make the Commonwealth 3-4 seasons if they wanted to, if there's enough in the comics. But this also is like on Game of Thrones, where it's like, oh, we don't have a book to follow anymore, so we can kind of like take this wherever we want. And they could, wrap this all up in season 11, knowing that we have movies coming forward and the spinoffs. And, if there's more to be done, I guess, but, getting just Walking Dead proper, like, I just maybe this
right. And you also have to consider that they're trying to protect their IP at this point, and they don't want to just flat run it into the ground.
Yeah,
right.
So at least let the show go out on a higher note,
right?
Rather than take the chance that with what we've seen as the seasons have progressed and the rates have gotten lower, that they finally just, flat run it into the ground.
Right. It's time to take it into a new direction, new stories, new, our characters. Let's introduce us to new ones, which, we have Fear, and like those, there's definitely been a lot of ups and downs with Fear, but it also was a completely, or at least what I appreciated about it too, it was a completely, like, not tied to any of our characters from The Walking Dead. It
Right.
used to. Now that the crossover. But I mean, it was like, oh, we get this whole family in LA. We have no, like whatever. And then we had all the way up to season 3, that was like, it's like, okay, with Madison and then, and Alicia and all that. And then of course things got mixed up because of showrunners. But now this whole new like approach with it's like almost kind of like a Western style, like little, like bottle episodes or, pairing off characters, or like the story that they're telling has been very, very enjoyable. And it's like, that's kind of that they're working on it. I mean, I feel like the Daryl and Carol spinoff is just not going to be interesting, at least maybe to me, because I don't
know. I'm going to hold my breath.
Right. I'll just have to see. It's hard. Like the journey that Carol and Daryl have had since episode 1, season 1, like when we first get introduced to them to all this time to where they're at now. Like, I feel that there's like, they've had this journey together that has like, there should be a definite end. Like there's an ending, and then somebody else takes over and moves on. Like Carol used to be the, like the battered, wife of, what's his face that got eaten. Daryl's like the redneck, with the brother who's, like just trouble and this and that. We grew up with them and saw all the, amazing things that Carol's, her character like turned into from all the like everything that she had to face and survive with. That it's just like this story to me is kind of like this is what I'm afraid. It's like they're pushing this too far for me, but we'll see. Maybe I'll get surprised. But I thought when I heard the spinoff, I was like, that's too much. It's someone else needs to another character needs to take over. But I'll just leave it at that.
You're going to make me say it. We need a new character to take over, like Hope and Iris.
Oh God.
Well, they only have one more season and then they're gone.
I had to go there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. We'll see. But I mean,
we'll see.
Yep. I'll still watch it. All right. If you want to interact with us, we encourage you to follow us on Twitter at Walking Dead TTM. To submit your theories and feedback, most people post in our designated episode thread in our Facebook group, and you can find that at facebook.com/groups/Walking Dead TTM. Email us at walkingdead@talkthroughmedia.com, and we also have a feedback form at talkthroughmedia.com/feedback. We love voicemails, so that's definitely we would love more of. So if you want to give us some voicemails, you can call 216-232-6146. All of our new episodes are on YouTube, so search for Talk Through Media and remember to subscribe and click the bell to get notified of when we have new videos. The videos do go out first before the podcast does, so that is definitely a great way to basically get the episode as soon as I'm done with it.
We would love it if you would like and review the Talk Through Media Facebook page at facebook.com/talkthroughmedia. The best way that you can support us is through our Patreon. That's at www.patreon.com/walkingdeadtalkthrough. We'd like to thank our Patreon supporters, Clint McCollum, Renee Murray, and Lawrence Todd. You can subscribe. You can subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts or the podcast client of your choice. While you're there, please give us a rating and a review. You can also leave us a review at podchaser.com. You can rate individual episodes or the whole podcast. Remember to share our posts on Facebook and Twitter when we post them, and tell a friend. Word of mouth is still one of the best ways to get us new listeners, and we like new listeners.
Yes. All right. Well, what else do we have going on with the network, Brian? You guys still doing Star Trek?
Well, these days we have Patreon coming out for the Star Trek podcasts. We were hoping to do one before the end of the month, but my schedule hasn't allowed it. But we'll be doing one probably week after next. And that you can find out about by going to patreon.com/Brian or Ruthie. That is for the Star Trek Discovery podcast, the Star Trek Picard cast. And Kyle and I do the Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks podcast. And also, we're saying we don't say it too much, but one of the things going on in the network is the Rebinge Deep Space Nine podcast that James and Kim do. So that has been going strong, and they've been releasing episodes every week. So you can catch that on the network. So
check them out. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, then, for next episode is season 10, episode 22. Here's Negan, which I think hopefully will be a very good glimpse into Negan's start. Written by David Leslie Johnson McGoldrick, directed by Laura Belsey, and the description, and I believe I got this off of Google and YouTube. With Maggie back at Alexandria, Carol takes Negan on a journey to minimize the increased tension. Here, Negan reflects on his late wife Lucille and the events that led him to this point.
And this one sounds like the most interesting of the six. Yes. So it's not supposedly reflecting the same story as the comic book miniseries. There's like a 4 issue miniseries of Here's Negan. But this is definitely, I think, a story that, of all the ones that has been presented in 10C, this is the one I want to see. So looking forward to it.
Yep. All right. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
I'm Brian.
And I'm LT.
And this is the Walking Dead Talk. Good night, everyone.
Have a good fucking night.